All right, welcome back. So in the last video, we left off with putting everything back together, all the engine stuff. We found that we had a bent valve on cylinder 4, and we repaired it. We lapped a new valve in, got everything back together, and did a final compression test, and everything ended up being good so far, at least. And I was thinking, while we did have everything out and apart, now is probably a good chance to go ahead and swap turbos. So we're going to be switching things up here. This one is supposedly GT35. It's just some eBay turbo that I bought. But I'm thinking this one might be a little too large for the power that I want to make. I really only want like 350, 400. So I think this one here, which is a max speeding rod GT30, is going to suit my needs a little better and hopefully give me a little more response. So that's kind of the plan of the video today. We're going to be swapping everything over. We're going to have to cut the exhaust. We're going to have to redo the intake. We're going to have to modify the turbo a little bit. And after we're done with the install of the turbo, I'll give the car a quick tune, turn off the vanos, and just mess around with some of the settings. We'll start it up and we'll see if the car runs. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here we are. I got the turbo in the car right here, bolted up to the manifold, and I have, it's actually not bolted up, it's just loosely hanging on there, but I think it'll be good enough. And I have the downpipe bolted on the bottom here. So, and I already went ahead and cut the flange off the downpipe. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm just going to raise it up a bit and kind of find a spot that I'm happy with. Okay, so let's say like that right there. This is the gap that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do is measure this out, do it in millimeters. It's easier for me. Or actually like half an inch. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend that by about 1/4 of an inch, just so I can get some of the tube in here, slide it inside the flange itself, just to make it a bit easier to weld. And so we're at 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to cut out a piece that's 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to stick it on here. And if everything fits up nice, then we'll weld it out. So I just finished cutting out the piece. I went ahead and deburred it as well. And now, just fitting it up real quick. Seems to me like this is gonna work. My hand is in the way, but if I move it, see kind of loosely there. Looks like that's gonna work, for me at least, for now. So, now, we're going to go ahead and pull this pipe off, pull the flange off right here, and we're going to prep everything for welding, and we're going to back purge it, and we're going to weld it out. So let's go over to the welding table. Just using some aluminum foil, poked a couple holes there, covered the O2 bung up, as well as put a plug with a little bit of aluminum foil on the side, and I got it hooked up to my purge line right here. So let's go ahead and weld it out. And alright, so now we got the exhaust downpipe back in the car. So what I went ahead and did was mark where I wanted it to go relative to the flange here, because it's going to be important, the position of the flange to the downpipe. So I bolted up the flange to the turbo, and I kind of found the spot that I wanted the pipe to be, and I put a couple of marks. I don't know if you can see them. Put a couple of marks, 1, 2, and 3 over there. So now I can go ahead and take this off and finish welding this out, and hopefully, if all goes good, we'll have a new downpipe. Let's get it. Look at the flange. I'll weld it up. Flanges are always the easy parts. They always end up looking super nice, but you can definitely tell that I need practice with my tube welding skills. Good tip. Something I didn't do is make sure you get a lot of practice before you weld it out, the final piece, and also to start at the bottom. So when you're coming around and you're welding around, you're already catching your stride and you're in the flow of things. That way nobody sees the the start and stopping points if you put them in the bottom. Yeah, these don't look great, but the thing is, we're going to be wrapping it in heat wrap anyways, so I'm not too worried about that. And eventually I will get rid of this, but for now it'll do just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and install this in the car and move on to the next thing. Oh, and before I forget, I don't know how much information you guys want to know about these things, but for the welding, stainless steel, I like to use just a 12 cup. 12 cups are pretty good, all-purpose stainless steel welding cup. Use a pretty long stick out. I think this is just lanthanated, so it's the blue kind, the tungsten. And for the flange itself was steel, just regular mild steel. I had to use 309 filler rod, and then I used 308, the standard stuff for the tubing itself. And then I just ran my gas. It was around it was between 20 and 25. And for the back purging, I had it at 15, and then I dropped it down a little bit under 10. I think that covers all my settings here. Alright, we have the downpipe in place again, with everything welded up, and looks like it's fitting, albeit with a little persuasion, but it's on. That's what matters. I got it bolted on the bottom too, and it fits well enough. So let's move on to the next thing. Alright, so turbo is back out of the car again. So the next things I'm going to do here is install the oil drain fitting, as well as the coolant ports. I'm actually just going to block them off. I had to do some research to figure out the sizes, but the coolant ports are M18s by 1.5. These are the plugs. It's the same as an O2 sensor. And also, by the way, these studs right here, I had to buy these myself. This turbo didn't come with the bolts for the exhaust, so these are actually M8 by 1.25. You can see here, these are the nuts I also had to buy. I think it says it right. Yeah, it says it right there. I don't know if you can see it, but it says M8 by 1.25. It's for anybody else that's installing this turbo here. But I mentioned it before, this is the Max Speeding Rod GT30 turbo. If anything, I could put a link to it in the description if anybody's interested.
Next up, we are drilling out this hole so we can add a boost control tap here. Let's do that next. Now take out the towels that I put inside, so we don't gotta clean up so much. Yeah, so for this I used an 1/8 inch NPT tap. It's a specific tap for NPT fittings. I also used a little bit of the Tap Magic for drilling the hole as well as tapping. And I had a little difficulty at first trying to get it to go in. I use this little attachment as well. This kind of makes it so you can use a wrench instead of using the old style taps, which I tried to do at first, but it didn't work out so well. With this, you can just get a lot more torque and leverage. It's just tricky because you have to really try to get it straight because it wants to move around a bit, but I think I got it in a relatively good spot here. So now that's done, let's go ahead and move on to the intake. Alright, so I got the turbo back on, and this is kind of the plan I'm thinking of. As you can see, the intercooler tubing right here, the 90-degree bend, is super close to the wastegate. So it's just going to be a tight fit. I'll try to do my best to like push it out that way to the right. And if you look down here, this is all new right here. I got two pieces here. I got it just taped up so they don't move. That's going to go in there. And as for the turbo itself, I'm going to cut off the tip right there. And I'm going to install this. So this is the reducer from 2.5 to 2 inch. Because the piping is already 2.5. So just want to keep it like that. And just reduce it down to 2 inch at the turbo. And it's going to come down here. It's going to come out right there. And I have to keep note that this is gonna be moved just a little bit that way, but I have to keep note of removal, so I need to leave a little bit of space like right there, so when I can pop it off I can get it out. And somehow, some way, I'm probably gonna end up cutting this piece and adapt this down and onto that. I might try doing that right now. And now I think all that's left is just to prep it and weld it out and just move from there. we are officially done with the welding. As you can see here, welded the flange to the turbo. It actually came out kind of shit. I don't know if it was because of the cast aluminum or my subpar abilities with aluminum. And got the tube welded that takes it down into the intercooler. Welded it up over here. This is kind of all the part we had to mess around with. It's hard to see if you can see it. More detailed look at the welds, but it's in place now. So we now have the exhaust done, the intake done. So I have to get everything bolted up, of course. I think this might be everything. Let's go ahead and get this bolted up. And we're back. So it's been a couple days. I had to wait on some parts. I had to wait on the this little piece right here. It took a couple days just to get this one piece. This is the I don't know, the adapter for the turbo drain for the feeding line. Had to wait on that piece since it was different from the other turbo. But now that we have that, I ended up putting everything back together. I still need like the heat wrap and stuff, but it should be good to start right now. And I think I have everything tightened up, ready to go. It's time for a startup and see how the engine runs here. I did mess around with the tune. If you look over here, is the laptop. Just changed some things. I took off the Vanos timing. I don't know if it affected it at all, but just to be safe, and I adjusted some other things as well. Might be messing around with the idle since this car idles pretty high. I think it idles at like 1400 RPM. But I have some more information on that stuff. I had somebody help me out, but I'll talk about that in the end of the video here. But I think right now it's time to go ahead and start up the car and see what happens. Let's do it. Success. So as we saw, the car now idles good. It starts and it's running. I just did a quick check on it right now, and there was no oil leaks, no coolant leaks. It was overheating a bit, so I had to just turn the car off, let it cool down a bit, squeeze the upper hose a bit, make sure it was bled. It took a while actually to bleed it. It sucked in a bunch of more water than I thought. I was getting a little worried actually, but seems like we're good. I started afterwards, ran it again, and I was messing with the idle. Seemed like the coolant temp started kind of staying a little more consistent between like 190 to 200, maybe a little bit over. And the idle's now gone down a bit because before it was idling around like 1400. Now I brought it down to between like 800, 900. This car is a bit strange because I think it's the fuel injectors, because for some reason it likes to idle really rich. Like right now it idles around like 12, like 11 and 12 AFRs, but you know, normally I feel like normally cars idle between like 14, 15, but this one likes to idle a bit rich, I guess, but it's happy. So but for the tuning stuff, I didn't really show too much of it, just because I didn't really do much to it, besides turning off the Vanos and adjusting the idle, and adjusting a couple other smaller things, the VE table a bit. But there's actually somebody who helped me out with the tune. His name is Dwight over at DC Works. I'm still having trouble with the tune since this is kind of the first car that I'm using as like a learning opportunity for tuning. So I have a lot of questions that I couldn't find answers to just by myself and messing around with it. So I found his website, and I was able to get in contacts with him, and he actually helped me. I sent him some of the previous data that I recovered from our last track day. He was able to give me some tips on what to do to adjust the tune, like with acceleration enrichment, because I don't know if you guys remember, but I was having trouble with that at the track. Every time I'd give it gas, it felt like it was just dumping way too much fuel, and it really made the car bog every time. And he gave me some tips with that. He told me kind of what to do. I had it set way too high, so I turned it down a bit. And right now, it seems, at least, I was giving it a couple of revs, and it seems like the car is a little more responsive. And he helped me out with some of the other things, like with the idle and a couple other smaller tidbits. But I feel like I need to get a real tune. He also tunes cars, remote tune, and I feel like we might have to do something like that down the road, only because, again, the problem is this car, you can't drive it on the streets, so I have to either get some dyno time or talk with him, see if we can figure out something at the track. But that's just future things. But for now, the car runs. It's idling well, and no problem so far. But again, we're not gonna really see until we hit the track and put the engine through its paces. But I feel like I've been rambling long enough. This was a fun little video. It took a little bit longer than I thought it would, only because it was a bunch of parts that I was waiting on. You think you have everything that you need, but there's always that one little piece that's missing that you forget about, and that happened a couple times here. But we got everything back together now. I still have to do a couple more touch-ups, like have to cut the hood out still. It doesn't really fit right, so I'm gonna have to just open up the hood a little bit, that cut out, as well as do a bunch of smaller things like adjust the alignment a bit. I'm gonna put the toe in just a little bit and adjust the seat here. I feel like it's a little too far back. Just little things that I figured from the last event. I think in the next video here, what we're going to be doing is running a boost leak test. I don't have a kit or anything, so we're going to be building one, and then testing the intake system for any kind of leaks. And then we'll kind of go from there, depending on what happens. But I think that's the next video. It shouldn't be too long from now. Since I think it's going to be a shorter video, and then we'll just kind of go from there. If anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. I think that kind of wraps up this video. So if you guys liked it, please hit the like button for me, and subscribe if you want to. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.